think that was cute.
Yep.
So, great background today, right, Joe? I was lucky enough to go do some research. The book Tijuana, Mañana de Iguana at the Galapagos, and this is one of the beaches, one of the many beautiful beaches there. Remember about this location is that there were adults cavorting, four of them, and they were the best time in the show, like running, whatever you call the sea lions do, chasing each other and dipping and diving, and they were like the best. So it was really entertaining. So I thought start with the summary from last week, just a quick summary, go through that, and then I went to Tijuana today, things. And again, for anybody who maybe didn't listen to the first, has been a great asset illustration books that we've worked on together.
Yep.
And so I know when I go through the chart, the parents can kind of, it's sort of, but of course it varies the starting place for people to think about how can I take my child go from where Tijuana is in the story, like under, to, okay, I'm willing to do this. So what I'll do is share my, just go through the story and very quickly, just as a review. And okay, so here we go with the front beginning of the book. And so it's hard. It's hard for a child to do. As we mentioned in the previous episode, there's a journal along with this. So we're going to talk about kids get through a task and learn from it and grow from it, but also how to help children when they're a little bit more about their brain and why I mentioned doing something hard like sight words or putting your pajamas on, brushing your teeth, any of those things that they might go into fight or flight. So here's Tijuana and he's hiding out, like he's hoping to be as small as he can be and as invisible as possible when his mom mentions that it's time to practice. So she isn't trying to, come on, it'll only take a few minutes and then you can go. That part of your brain that doesn't respond to that, the active part it is. And sort of talking about it can feel threatening. Well, Galapagos hawk was ready to eat you up. And so he begins to understand from mom's help that brain that's safe and its job is to protect you, chasing an iguana. But in real life, the brain is upstairs brain that helps regulate its response when we realize, oh, it's sight words, not really in a life-threatening situation. But sometimes the downstairs brain is very, very protective, like you can see in the picture that you drew, Joe. And then it's hard the upstairs brain to get a message down to the downstairs brain. Talk about some ways that can make how the upstairs brain can hurt the downstairs brain. And we talk about some strategies in here and some things that he thinks can make him feel a little calmer, including just being, but having fun. And his mom sort of said, those are things your brain does. So then she a little bit more about the upstairs, downstairs brain and how to get the message from upstairs to downstairs. And then she talks about, well, every time you practice something, it's easier to get those messages down. And actually for the child to think, oh, playing this game with sight words fun. I didn't expect that. Or recognize just at the right level. And I've got somebody with me and I am able to my emotions and I'm in a place where I can start thinking actually is easier than I would have expected. So he gets like I have learned a lot of things, and I the big kids who are reading, that looks like fun. She helps him think about ways and messages that he do hard things, and she talks about games as a way for him, and then in the end, he is able to read the words. He starts thinking, oh, hard things. I'm actually starting to learn. So he doesn't, I guess, to keep procrastinating. What make a chart. So there we go. It's got several steps, and these don't have to be exactly like this, of course. But first thing for an adult to think about before starting working with the child is the readiness. So as we saw at the beginning, with the blanket, there's no child is start doing anything to be online. And so I see this a lot with kids in my social skills groups. Kids will have these fight or flight responses, literally running away or having a meltdown because they asking them to do something that feels like too much and does feel things that children sometimes that make them feel like they're not learning. So under here, I'm just gonna. I just made up an activity where to use as an example. So the idea, the thing that we're asking the child to do, and the next column here, work on math facts, which is another thing like sight words. Just memorization, even though you can do games with it, you have result in the same kind of from kids. The sight words can do, but other kinds of things that you shouldn't be late. Those kind of things that are hard for kids. So the readiness, we can go here A at the and that what you want to look at is how does the child, is this an environment that the child feels safe in, that there's not noise, there's not a lot of sensory input that's making it difficult for them to attend. And are they with people that they feel can help them? And then another, I think a child more ready to do an activity, a little bit challenging, time to play and have exercise. And did they get last night? Or do they yawning when you're trying to work? If had any free time, kids are with their schedules that it's hard for them to just have that free time. to do whatever they want without a deadline, without pressure. You only have 5 minutes to do that, and not necessarily an end date, that an end time, because we got to get out the door, go pick up your look, and this is one think about that hydration, and then backpack. How was their day? Like having time before how the day was. Were there disappointments that happened? Did a friend say they didn't want to play with you? Did the teacher ask you to do something that's comfortable for you in the classroom to answer the question? Or all kinds of big feelings happen in a child's day. And then also the question of are there too many things in your schedule and there's not time to just, you're always on the go. So one way, there's some signs here that somebody can look at and say, oh, these might be things that are making, if I see these things happening. So procrastinating, a minute, I need 5 minutes, or tired, which sometimes is just an excuse, but tired and bored, they often will say. But I think that can be a little bit tricky to raise, I think. Certainly by the child, but even sometimes and then lying on the floor, rolling around on the floor, and they don't want to get up and do anything. They might be arguing with an adult, or they might off task. You get them to it, but then they're talking about everything they're supposed to be talking about or doing, or they might be looking around or talking sound they heard at the house next door or something like that. And similar to that would be diverting, and like trying to change the topic, like, oh, I want to tell you about what happened at school today. And that it's doing the task, complaining about those kinds of things. Sometimes talking like a baby in a younger voice can indicate that the child is not ready for learning. Making noises is also something I sometimes see. Silliness is also a pretty easily recognized sign that the child's not available for learning. If they say they can't or they don't know how, that one's easy because they tell you, and what they think. And if they're not really working in earnest, they're like, I see lots of different ways, holding the pencil in a fun, sitting, the posture in the chair is different than what they usually do. Or they might be whining or saying they're all done, because they don't want to be there working on the activity, say homework, or they might actually destroy the materials they're working with, rip them up, wad them up into a ball, and things like that. There are more obvious signs than those, which might be, and then not answering, or they might actually be fighting, like that might mean sitting, scratching, choking somebody, punching, pushing someone, slashing something down, and even growling. So those are all things they do because they don't know how to tell us this seems too hard. So we'll talk about too, like, well, what's that feel like it's too hard for kids? What are some skills that Joe at school, do you see some of those things commonly that you've seen kids do?
What we have listed here, mostly crying, and
Yeah,
they're just frustrated. Yeah, they're just frustrated, and it's if they're old enough, I usually just sit and talk with them and stuff. Sometimes they're kind of unconsolable. like it gets to a point where it's like, well, you can probably, go sit in the office for a little bit and kind of beyond my control, and it's kind of taken away from the rest of the class.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can tell where they have to put their head and in their hand, and like just you can just tell they have like little face. Yeah, and it's like, okay, what's going on here? So, well, I can't do that. I mean, I feel like I'm patient enough with the students where I can just sit with them, and when I do my IT work, it's kind of the same thing, because it's like, well, because they're not doing, this certain aspect of this technology. The kids are like the same thing. It's just like, here with as long as you want. And what's really cool is the kids just, other kids, they're so innocent and they want to know, and they're not, what's the word? They haven't been affected by something, and so they're just pure. So willing, like especially the ones that get it, and they'll say, "Oh, I can help you." It's like, I get it, Mr. Bauman. It's like I can help them. Are you sure? It's like, oh yeah, I can show them, and it's just awesome, and to see that they're just willing to help one another. But you just have to give them the opportunity that they show and be more than just their student. They want to be a little bit like a teacher too. And so they want to help their class. It's really cool to see that whole thing kind of work out in class the way it does.
Yeah, I love that too. When I ask kids in the class, and often mention is helping somebody, or if I ask today that was helpful to somebody else, like they usually can say something. And
right.
And a huge impact on others. And then it makes others feel included and valued.
Definitely.
Yeah. So then on the next column, it's what skill you need to practice, and there, if any, what are the lagging skills. So I just made up the example, like, and already know that the child, for example, persisting, it's hard, they don't want to do it, or they start and then they're done after one or two problems, because it's hard to sustain focus, or they don't feel confident, or lots of times what I see is let me just get it done. They don't really care what it looks like. All of those, again, are signs that there's some skills that are not, but that it is some of the things that I think about when I see a child, they can. And so I always assume that they're doing what they can do. Not doing it, having any of these, they are feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, whatever, then I feel like it's my job to figure out why. So here are some things I got. So do the stand, especially what the teacher is saying, because so that can be hard. Sensory processing, and or are you floppy, or kind of like what you were saying, that the sensory systems are not working the way that you would expect. They might be hypersensitive to the sound, or they might be sitting next to somebody who's space a lot, or touching them or looking at them or something like that. And it can bring anything at school require output. So you have to write the answers down, even if it's math, and write it down. And that aspect of what does a 5 look like? And I have to look up on the board to find it. And then I have to figure out how to make it. Split level, they're still learning. And so a lot of extra work that can go just putting a number 5 down on the piece of paper. Control, we talked about that a little bit. Wobbly bodies, they're difficulty sitting on the carpet, they get squirmy. It's difficult for them. And sitting in a chair, they're often slouched sort of backwards or leaning forward, like, because it's hard to sit tall against gravity. And then language processing. So did you understand the difference between words I said? If you were doing rhyming, for example, did you hear a difference between man? Pretty. What if it was man and nan? Can they hear that difference? So that can make, and then communication, just to like what they're thinking, because can say, I don't know how to do this, or I'm stupid, or whatever. It's often that they can't tell you what is hard about it. So again, that's why I create this list about these things in my head, like, and it's really, kids can't figure it out. Is it because of one of these things put into kids? They can say yes or no. And when they can answer those questions, they're very clear about it and very honest, and it's really helpful. And then the cognition, like, by the time a child's in 3rd or 4th grade, they're still struggling with reading, then open up their social studies books or science books, they're really struggling, because now it's intent. And I'm sure you've heard, Joe, that saying, the first of school is going to read, and then after that, it's about. So if kids are doing to read still and read them, so then the confidence kicks in. Like, I don't feel confident. Of course, why wouldn't you avoid feel confident? And if you didn't feel competent either, some of these like skills. And then see, like, that's not often taught, but it's really important for kids to be able more time, or I didn't understand it. But a lot of kids aren't willing to do that. They'd be embarrassing, or they don't even know to ask. They don't even think, oh, I don't really understand what you're saying. And then they get to their desk to do the work, open their books, and like, I don't know what to do. And then they sit and go, either is it like he's understand it, this can be someone to know what's going on. So that's why these questions then are helpful. Self-awareness, again, a lot of kids are not aware of things that they're doing. They're not paying attention to the fact that, well, the teacher spoke class, but you're playing with the dirt on the rug. It's a little piece, and get engaged and sit and do what the teacher's asking them to do. And that's a way that can help them. But then one-on-one, because when I work with kids, I always make sure I'm no farther than their arm's length, because like they could be in the environment. It's just hard to shift from activity to another activity. They get in the zone with something, and then they have to, can be difficult. Then problem solving, talk with parents about the importance of that, because if they believe that builds self-esteem, that builds idea that I can see myself solving this problem. It's not me. So that future self, oh, I've solved problems like this before. I can do this one too. So practicing, not necessarily just in academic activities, but in all, comes up all the time. And as parents, we tend to say, oh, do this, and we solve the problem for them. Whereas attendants can they get their own shoes and socks at appropriate level, or are they dependent on you? And because it's a lot of work to learn shoes and socks on, and lots of times to say, oh, we're running late, let me put them on for you, versus a child struggling through because there's time to sort it out, the heels lined up and all of that. It still can be really hard to have those skills that other kids at that age are able. They are finding things in general easier for them. So that's a lot. Joe, do you have on just half of that? We still can't hear you. There. I don't know. I can't hear you. I'll let you figure it out, and I'll go on and come back. The column, resilience, just how easily can you bounce back from. Many of the kids I work with stay with the child hours, days, and later, and because sometimes it's because it's not for them in their mind. They don't know what to do with it. Maybe they haven't shared with somebody. Kind of lingers and stays in that emotional. It's heavy, and low praxis or motor planning, which is knowing how to do something. It can be knowing how. It can be knowing how to join a grid. It can be knowing how to write that number 5. It can be how to put those socks on. Anything's how. It's usually any of the challenges that I see are struggling with. Persistence, we talked about that a little bit already. Are you interested in figuring it out, taking time? Like, you get that sort of burst of, I did it. And then integration of reflexes, that's a complicated one to explain. They're a little bit like developmental milestones, but they're even more foundational than that. It's a little bit more complex for this talk, but there are things that do make it hard for kids to be able to use their eyes in ways that are helpful for writing, and their reflexes, even about attention for them, that we can work on, mature, and make things easier for kids. And without the integration of those reflexes, kids do go into fight or flight. So part of the purpose of working on integrating those reflexes is to calm down the nervous system. And automaticity. So I always, when I think of this word, I always think of learning to drive a car and how tense my body was, and trying to remember all the things, practicing enough to it, and it wasn't stressful for me. That really so many things were automatic. So we all have had, and sort of like, oh, 15 mode, how did I get here? That we were still monitoring what was going on. About we get in the car and we start driving to work. That of thing. Control, of course, is a huge thing. That dysregulation, most that I'm working with now understand that term, and it's such a perfect word to explain. Love just doesn't have the coping strategies to know what to do, and often it sort of builds in them until it spills over. And then that's what Joe was in the classroom or other areas. Child's not really available for learning. So on that, can you not blurt out? Can you, sometimes those are same potty words in the classroom, those kinds of things are self-control. But if you're having to remember, oh, I'm not supposed to say words, then then some of your brain has been taken up thinking about that, and now there's to listen to the teacher or to think through or to do any of these other things. And then flexibility, that's a little bit having to do with transitions, but also can you if they made a mistake, actually we're going to do this instead, you switch gears. If a friend says we're going to play, so we're going to play football, can you shift, go with crowd and be like, oh, I didn't get to play all the things in the group. And of course, attention, focus, most people understand that. Multitasking, again, the circumstances, sometimes one thing. And sometimes multitasking is here and think about that can be really, really hard. They get so excited and they forget about, are they keeping them have their hands close? And then we have to write a paragraph. Can you remember when you start, can you remember, can you keep and how you're going to get there? And while you're doing that, can you pause to try to figure out how to spell a word? Put the capitals and the periods in. Those kinds of things are working memory. Takes a lot of brains to hold that information, but we have to be able to hold it while we're doing something that's a part of the thing. And then the next one on there is time management. Can you self-monitor and know poking at the child next to you or doing things? Then suddenly you realize the teacher says 5 minutes and then it's time for recess, and then you hurry and get it done. And then stress balance, again, sort of what we talked about, how you get about sleep and then planning a paragraph, for example, with the beginning, 3 parts in the middle, and that's partly executive functioning, but it's also a lot more than that as well. Organization, like I see organization on a page, if it has lines on it, kids can do fairly well with that, but without line, like a lot of times kids have to label the parts of a plant, and that's where kids can't organize that space easily sometimes, and writing will be very like huge letters or really tiny, very inconsistent, that kind of thing. But the structure of the lines helps them be able to do it in a different way. See if we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we got all. Do you, what do you see at school with all those?
I think, well, since I only teach like participate, and I think where the body language, you can, with the older ones, like maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade, a lot of it was just like the arm crossing, and which is so bizarre to me, because when I was a student, that was that, and maybe it was just me. It's like obedience and respect kind of stuff, which I think a lot of it is kind of missing in this now. But yeah, control, the attention, the focus, the multitasking. Those are all skills like I could tell, like from TK at least until 3rd grade. You can see the progression, certain thing, and just they're responsible. They so it's really refreshing to see, at least in school, how the word is always like they take the ownership.
Yeah,
and they really do. And teachers are great too. They really kind of implement. Okay, Mr. Bauman's going to be coming in 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll go get the Chromebooks. They're ready for me, and they're ready for me.
That's great. That's great. That makes a year for everyone when that's happening. So that's great to hear that you're seeing that. So then we go to the next column, and this is reviewing with the child. How do we know when we're finished? Children of any age, and they just like throwing and catching, and I'm done, and they start walking away. More, of course, some of these things them to know, but I'm teaching them. But some of it is there's not an idea of an ending, and with throwing them, except an agreement, like if you are making a puzzle, then there's an ending to that. We all know that's done. Or if you're lacing, here's 10 beads to lace on. But that's a big piece, I think, for kids to have a sense of this is what done. So whenever possible, like sometimes a child and showing me a writing that they've done, maybe a 4th grade, and if I ask the teacher for a representative sample for someone else in the class, they've written 3 paragraphs to help them understand what that maybe 1 paragraph of that, and say they include in this paragraph, and how can we do something. This is what the end product will look like, especially if one that has been cut out and pasted, what a step-by-step activity will look like when we're finished. So now let's go through the steps. When we're thinking about getting started, like think about, well, as in this example, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to think about the environment. Make sure it's quiet because interruptions can be difficult for the child. Taking a break. And these are some of the things that are in the book, but also it's some of the things that Tijuana says, oh, I could do these things. And then we could ask, to the child. Do you want to stay with you? They have strong opinions about that. I do it on my own, or yes, please sit with me. Generally, they will sit with them, and some me to sit with them over their parent because I think they think that sometimes I can help them a little because just experience. And and then I'm going to be watching for signs of stress, and so I can child already ready to go, but at some point they might hit a wall, and I have to figure out what that is, but always be watching for it. So then, so we're all praying really. One that I hear from parents is that if they tell the child what to expect, things go much more smoothly. If something I often share with you, if you're doing a writing assignment, there's probably 30 things that are actually going on with the child, and meaning things going on, but I mean that go into write sentence. I have that list in my head and think, what is my goal in this assignment? Is it letter formation? Is it what kind of support? I have to be very clear. So I often try to make sure I suggest that parents really think about what they want, what the goal of in this case, math facts. That's a pretty close. We're going to spend 15 minutes practicing them, and for a variation of flashcards, it can be matching games, like games with numbers. It can be anything that you do in that 15 minutes, and then keep the kids' interest because I've had enough practice of the flashcards. Okay, we're ready for the next step. So having things in mind, going to do next, so that the child doesn't say with this and say, oh, what should I do? It's going to be next, and it's right there at fingertips because you've prepared for it. And then the next one, we can go columns, the little cheat sheets. So the example here that I put was and add in manipulatives and games, make it fun, and make sure, because sometimes it's tempting, like, this is going well. Maybe we can do a little bit more, but it usually doesn't go like minutes and stick to that. So on section C here, it's a little shorter. Some strategies that and in Big Feelings of There's a bunch of that on the website of Joseph, and that story talks about some he can pick from when he gets upset about something. These are some that are common among the kids. If I give them ideas, they sometimes come up with these ideas, like Tijuana by tens. They think that they really like proud of being able to do that, or even counting to 100. I can count. They really like that. Taking deep breaths. Sometimes kids idea, and sometimes getting it. Hugging. A hug goes a long way with kids. Singing a song, break. Kids say they go and read a book back to the task, and just any kind of break, exercise break, anything, water break, whatever. Having a lovey there to help sort of get through the challenge. A lot of kids like to take something that feels comforting to them, with something difficult at the table where they're doing fine motor work. Just if this isn't working, like something different. The words, just adding some sensory activities, like getting a balloon out and playing ball with the balloon, or keep the balloon up in the air, or do soccer with the ball with the balloon, like in a crab position like that. I just said, but it's a way to engage with the child if you do it together, and you're trying to connect with the child in order to be able to feel like there is a connection. Some kids are getting quite a bit of awareness about that in school, and seem to be open to that and know a lot about it. Maybe even yoga poses that might belong that. And sometimes kids a little calm corner where it's just can interrupt them and they come out when they're ready. And in this book, Tijuana Mañana, there's some affirmations in there. I can do hard things. There are lots of different things about affirmations that are available for kids. And then self-talk, being able to say, I've done it before, I can do it again. That's one a lot of kids do take in and feel like if they can remember another time. And sometimes visualizing what's that like, and maybe an adult can help the child and tell the words, or they can draw something that will help them with the task that's hard. And arts and crafts can be that they can take a break and do. And then they can make something fun out of something that they don't like. And that's a big one for kids too. They fun. If it feels fun to them, they'll do it. And then, of course, bubbles is another way of doing something like taking deep breaths, but it's fun. And house always having all of that, something fun. If you can know. So, Joe, do you make these ideas on their own, or these kids give tips like this, or what do you see at school?
Yeah, I mean, tips from it's kind of funny. They so if it's a very fun project, for me to see as like they're into it and they're helping one another, and they'll go from like one table to another and tell by body language. But sometimes the kids pick up on it, and especially if it's a close friend, and they'll help one another without even me saying, "Hey, you know, you help Timmy," kind of thing. They know. But I put my a little bit too rambunctious, excited that they're just kind of okay. Everyone's getting a low roar here and get a little bit more focused. So I only get them when I was teaching them. I would get them for about 15 minutes twice a week. So they always look forward to it.
Yeah.
They're all excited. Like when you said feel proud, yeah, that was the one thing. It's like I did it, and they would come up to me. It's like right, and they're all constantly getting to make sure it's like okay, they just want that approval.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it started off hard, but now they finally get it. Now they're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, a goal. But then some of the students, they would just go beyond what I could teach them. And they're doing something that it's like, I don't know what that is. but so, but it was encouraging to see that they wanted. So, but some students, you just see they're just this like such a mixture. It's not hit or miss, but they all work at it.
Yeah.
You just so they feel. At least my goal was just for them to feel.
Thinking about too, that growth mindset that you're this, I bet I could do this too. The chart here. So I didn't put it in here, but one of the things I sometimes do is talk with kids after we've gone through some of these things and they're clear about what to do. I ask them to search 2 or 3, and lots of times they do. I ask them to look again at it, and it's of related, and the reality of it is that it's always less successful. So I give more support or less support. Might have to be modified a little bit to be at their level. Might need to be more supported, provide help by the adult, but they can get the job done if things are added into. And I'll talk also in just a few minutes about that. Can make it easier. So, so I have one here and one for the parent session after the task is done. And so I just made it out. It was about doing it with an adult, feel easier and more fun. And then the adult response was, oh, it seems to know the child to do, but hard to make it stick. A hug made him smile when we were all done. So if we look over here again at these charts, D, some examples show signs of progress that I noticed this. So I think a lot of people understand that if you just say, oh, great job, the kids don't really know to try again next time. They don't even know what they did well. But if you're very clear about what they did, and you can them because they have an idea. So some examples of progress. If you can see the child feels encouraged, proud of themselves. A lot I work with don't have that connection with that feeling of proud of themselves. But when they do accomplish something that they thought was going to be hard for them, they do get a show their mom or their dad what they did, and they really do show that they're encouraged. The idea of does the child now believe he can do it? Look what you did. Let's post this on the fridge, and then pull it down next time you have something similar to do. Say, this is what you did last time. Kids forget quickly what they accomplished. So bringing it down, the visual really helps. This before, we're going to do the very same thing as last time. And maybe you do a bit less support because now they understand it more, but just maybe a little bit less support so that they feel like, oh, I can do it. And then at the end, you can say, and guess what? You did this part all by yourself. I didn't need to give you any because you've practiced enough to. And then some kids will start thinking, oh, it's getting easier. They're not having to break everything down into steps. It's with the picture frame unveiling them, one of them was, oh, it's starting to, or act surprised that they got something. Um, and then if we can, they may feel like it's hard doing it. That's a sign of progress. This isn't going to be too much for me. Or if we can relate to the character, it's that, I think that's how Tijuana Mañana felt. Is that how anxiety that they're having? Maybe you see less of that as a sign of progress, or they need less support. Just like I said already, they don't need you to do quite as much. And then thinking about, so that's the evaluation aspect. Wait, the next time, should I do? So in the example, I should do more of the same. I should keep it light. I want to remember that games make it easier. Maybe instead of just making it all games, I might throw in some writing. All right, I'll write 2 plus 3. You write the answer this time. Maybe I make sure it's right there for them to see. Or maybe I trace it for them. Maybe they. So ways that you can identify what worked and didn't work and know what to do next time could be repeated exactly the same way again, practice. Or I can demand or decrease a little bit of the demand. I can make it easier, like taking turns doing it, or tracing, like I just said, or copying instead of actually doing the whole writing batch. I can add visual support. I can simplify the task. I find writing 6 boxes, one for each math problem, something like that. Positive reinforcement. It can be yourself as we finish this. We're going to go make cookies, or we're going to go for a walk and look for frogs or worms because it rained last night. Those kinds of things. Manipulative, even get hands on, and then adding in breaks. A lot of kids like to have breaks like frequent. Like I'm just going to write one sentence and I want to break. I'll do 5 math problems and I want to break. I know that's what's going to be the easiest way for them to get it done. And then sometimes saying or doing it with it is instead of writing it down can be ways to do things alternatively. And then breaking it into steps. It's a huge, like we don't have to think about all this. So the adult breaks it down into to do the first step, and that then sort of not, but do all the, and then it's not the 10 steps that need to be done. That makes it feel overwhelming. A whole page of math problems, a whole page of words that are dense on the page, like make kids say, I don't know. I'm talking about a lot of kids who have lagging skills. Many of the kids I'm working with, about all kids, but something out of this is you can grade it to be less or more. It's like, oh, my gosh, I wish somebody would just do it for me, right? And that's probably equivalent for kids when they have to do something hard because it takes so much time, takes so much brain power, it takes so much money to pay so much to prep for ourselves before we give it to somebody else, if that's the route we decide to go. Just thinking about, oh, do I want to do it again next year? We actually go through all these steps in doing taxes ourselves. And then deciding how to support levels and how much I need to do. And then just following a routine, getting used to something. You do it the same way every day, at the same place every day. Facilitates success. So Joe, you might be muted. Well, I'm not sure what, but this, and when Tijuana Mañana comes out, which we're expecting in a few months, this will be on the website and access on their own as a support for reinforcing messages from the book. So for people to to help their child move to, okay, I feel like I can do this. So hopefully all of these little charts quite dense. Speaking of which, and there's a blank one to do your own, and help encourage children to do Iguana, be like Tijuana. That's the idea of the book. Your brain's there to protect you, and there's an adult there who can be your brain for you and help you out yourself. Some ways to do that. So thanks for being here and sharing your thoughts, Joe. Today it was very valuable to have you. I appreciate you being with us. So we'll be back again same time next week. And it's going to be more about the journal next time and how to use that. Okay.
Good. All right.
Oh, good. Bye.
Got that.
Recording stop.